progress.
Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Empowered Manhood series. My name is Yamuna and I'm super excited and honored to be hosting this series. It's a topic that I've been wanting to dive into in a public way for many, many years. Been doing it privately in a monastic setting, living a monastic lifestyle, helping other men through the challenges that basically come with trying to live high ideals while living in a modern society, and sort of the plight of the modern man has sparked that fire in me to start this. So the first episode that I am super excited to bring to you is the topic of earning your own respect. So this is not earning your own respect in the sense of flexing your own muscles, showing off, flashing what you have to kind of get the external appreciation, which kind of then gives the facade of respect, which most of the time in actuality is mostly masked jealousy and envy, potentially that's coming in from people around you that want what you have, basically. And now you've earned your respect. You've kind of made your position known as the top dog or the gold medal winner or whatever it is, and earned your respect. I'm not speaking about that type of respect. What I'm speaking about is that sort of internal awareness and connection of your own intrinsic respectability, empowerment, care, affection, and worth as a man. And so I see that there's many obstacles and many poor effects that have come from not accessing this quality. So I want to start out with just speaking about those. The first one being the shame and guilt around really not meeting our goals and ideals, which basically, in one sense, causes us to lose trust with ourselves and create a sense of hopelessness that I don't trust myself. I can't actually do what I say. I can't follow through. I'm weak. I'm bad. So many mindsets stem from this shame and guilt around not meeting our goals. And that hopelessness really is like the relinquishment of the possibility of attaining our aspiration. That's what hopelessness means. It's just not attainable. And when that becomes hyperinflated, it becomes what we call, nihilism, which basically just, I don't matter, my actions don't matter, my life doesn't matter, which is the hyperinflated version of shame and guilt that's compounded over time. So that's one issue, obstacle to respect. Having that, of course, is a huge one. Then another is basically the lack of real empowered male role models and aspirational kind of heroes and figures in existence. I know I basically didn't make any super big changes in my character until I surrounded myself with the people who were actually living them and actually showed me that, hey, these high ideals that some part of me really wants to access are actually available for me. And people are actually attaining them. And what really inspired me was not just the sort of inspiring parts of the people around me and aspirational role models around me, but really when they shared their struggles and journeys of like, oh, I actually struggled with these same things that you're going through. It showed me, like, I was actually shocked and surprised. I think just joining a spiritual community, I put people on a pedestal and thought, they're so incredible now. They could have never struggled with what I've struggled with. But seeing that many of the most inspiring people I have in my life are people who went through the same things or way more difficult things than I have. And for me, that's like, why not me? Like, if my goal is to serve as many people in this world as possible, what is a more beneficial mindset to adopt? Is it that why not me? Like, why can't I attain that? Why can't I be the person I aspire to be, the man I aspire to be? Or is it like I'm a piece of shit and I'm not worth it and I'll never attain it, and it's just my karma, or however we want to justify it? Which one of those is going to serve my highest ideal more? And so I found having those real aspirational heroes in my life who are actually living it out on a day-to-day basis was massive for me. I think another obstacle is basically the culture of mass narcissism that we find ourselves in. It obviously plays itself out in a tremendous amount of ways on TV, movies, social media, self-promotion. But even I think in our sort of spiritual yoga and self-development communities, as this sort of new philosophy of like living your own truth and chasing your own bliss, which basically chase your own bliss is like do what feels good to you at all times and never face the austerity of doing what's true and what's real, because that's really hard. Don't ever sacrifice ease over bliss. Don't ever sacrifice ease over really living out what you say you believe, is more how I should put it. So all these philosophies play themselves out as well and make it super hard for us to kind of break free and actually really connect with these higher ideals that are incredible and that are attainable and that are very natural for the expansive consciousness to want to access. We just feel like, okay, well, look around me. It's just nobody's aspiring for that. Everyone's steeped in narcissism. Which brings me to my last point, which is basically being a man of many ideas and ideals without really being a man of action, being someone that puts what they say into play and sees it through to completion, sees it through to its embodiment, to its fullest extent, to its presentation and implementation, but rather just speaking about all the things that you want to do and all the things that you want to be, and then struggling with actually doing them, not achieving any of them, and then just shifting your focus over and over again to a lower ideal or different ideal, and just kind of shifting like that. One of the ways I see that playing out just in my own community is like the ideal of having your own like farm or sustainable community or like off the grid kind of thing. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to buy a bunch of land. I'm going to, just have a self-sustainable community and just, live harmoniously, yet not knowing what it actually takes, the tremendous amount of money, organization, incredible level of consciousness you need to actually live harmoniously with people, what to speak of people who don't share a spiritual ideal as the top, but more just like, yeah, we're all going to chase our bliss here in our off-the-grid community, but really what most people want is the facility of community without the responsibility of community. And so the responsibility part never gets picked up on. Just the ideal and the idea of it gets romanticized without the austerity and the challenge, the super massive challenges that come with actually doing something like that. Okay, so those are just to get you started off with a few of the obstacles that are super apparent to me just diving into this as a brainstorm. And so just a quick reminder, this is the Empowered Manhood series. It's my inspiration to just share a few ideas around the tremendous challenges that are facing the modern man so that we can basically uplift ourselves. So every single person that walks into our life, we can uplift and we can have some sort of positive impact on. And we can, first of all, take that step with ourselves to just be embodied, be satisfied in ourselves, and actually live how we say we want to live. So please like, comment, share, subscribe, spread this message however you feel. That's the best way you can give back, and I super appreciate it. All right, so now to dive into this just a little bit further. We spoke about what the antithesis or the opposite, or the failure to actually earn your own respect looks like shame and guilt, not living, being a man of ideas, etc. These things I outlined previously. The attainment of earning your own respect really looks like living your own ideals and meeting your goals consistently. And what I want to zoom in on today, the aspect I want to zoom in on, is it doesn't really take a great or amazing person to speak about their ideals. Of course, we hear many people with many different ideas, but really today's episode, I want to speak about becoming impeccable with your word, impeccable with your thoughts. You know, of course, the principle behind becoming, it's not just like some arbitrary thing that we decide to do, right? Just become impeccable with our word just because whatever. But really the principle behind it is to overcome hypocrisy and to live in alignment with truth to the highest extent that we can at our current level of development, which we should always be striving to create a greater connectivity and receptivity to, right? Become a real advancing human will be a servant of truth, right? Not just, you know, I'm an exemplar of truth, but rather I'm a servant of truth and I'm open to being corrected. Okay, let me take a sip here. So what makes this challenging and the way that we see the average person doing is that they're not impeccable with their words. They think in one way, which may not even be aligned with their real values. They speak in a way that's not even aligned with what they're actually thinking and feeling. They're not able to access that on a deep level and communicate and articulate that. And then they do something different than what they speak. So they're not able to follow through. They're not able to act in alignment. And a master of their own consciousness will think in alignment with their deepest values, their core values. They'll actually say what they think. They'll speak what they think. And they'll actually practice what they speak. Practice what they instruct others. And so the way that we see this basically playing out in society on a massive level is, you know, we could probably think of 1,000 examples, but the doctor who eats poorly, who is very unhealthy, the dentist who's outside, you know, I've seen this. I remember just laughing, just seeing the dentist step outside to smoke a cigarette. People who say they love animals but eat them, right? That's a super heavy one. I'm not going to go on a whole vegan tangent, but just any amount of sincere reflection will lead someone to not be able to hold that belief that they love animals and they eat them. Anyways, we'll speak about that more later, but gossip culture is another one. So considering someone a friend and then looking down on them or speaking negatively about them or speaking about them in a way that's sticky, that's not trying to uplift and bring the best out of them, but rather just zooming in on faults, which it doesn't take a super great person to be able to see faults in other people. It's like sometimes we pride ourselves on like feeling like we discovered something about someone that's like a negative quality and like we're some genius for figuring out and spotting it. But it doesn't actually take a very great person to see that. What a great person does do is they see the good in any sort of person and they draw that out of them, which of course is a super high ideal. I'm not there yet. But that is what a great person does and what, you know, I hope we can strive to do together. And a personal level, not being impeccable with our word looks like, in a small way, it looks like, oh, you know, I'll call you right back, and not actually calling them right back. Or I'll do it in an hour. Don't worry, yeah, I'll do it in an hour, and then not actually doing it. Or it looks like exaggeration, right? Exaggerating, which the opposite of is minimizing, which is basically warping our language to make a reality not really fit truth, but more fit what we feel it should be than what it actually is. That's what exaggeration and minimization is. So, like for instance, you know, it was sort of innocent, but as a kid, I remember feeling bad about lying. And a way that I remember lying is like, oh, you know, my classmate would ask, what'd you get on the test? What'd you get on the exam? And I got like an 83 or something, but I wanted to like I just felt disappointed in myself. So because I felt disappointment, I wanted to rectify what I was feeling, not feel bad anymore. So I exaggerated to make myself believe the reality of like, oh, I got an 87, I got a 90 or whatever. And that exaggeration helped me feel like I've rectified feeling bad about not meeting an ideal of mine. So, that's just a very innocent example. But the point is, the innocent ways that we break words with ourselves really is only a disservice to ourselves. And we may think that white lies and minimizing, exaggerating, not following through with things is harmless, because in an external sense it sort of seems like it is, but when it comes to your own sense of self-respect and self-worth and empowerment, it is a tremendous deal. Basically because when it comes to chasing the highest ideals and living with the highest integrity, climbing the biggest mountains, you won't be able to believe that you can actually do that because you've broken trust with yourself in a micro way 1,000,000,000,000 times. So when it comes to something so grand and so big, how are you going to keep your word for that? How are you going to follow through? How are you actually going to attain that? So some of the bigger ways that this plays out in our personal lives is like living against our ideals pretty much on the daily, right? Like not having the relationships I want to have. Like I have friends who I don't enjoy being around, or who don't uplift me, who don't believe in me, who don't inspire me, who I don't feel like is a positive interaction for me, or who I want to actually be like. Or romantically, or having the job that you actually want to have. You are just working like a slave, or your 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and dreading it every single day. Or some part of you that just feels like this is not aligned, right? We all have that inner compass of integrity and truth that is basically trying to point us towards respecting what we know our own deepest self and higher self actually wants. Or it shows itself as not living the lifestyle that we want, not being as healthy as we want, not being as spiritually connected as we want. It shows up as divorce. It shows up as instructing other people in things that we ourselves are not even following or not even subscribing to ourselves. And it shows up in the tremendous limited beliefs and stories and projections that we put on ourselves and that we put on others and we put on reality. It's all ways that we're not really aligning with truth. It's all ways that we're sort of being hypocritical, and really not accessing a deep sense of self-respect, because anyways, there's so much I could say here. But what I want to say is basically we've become so accustomed to being mediocre with our words at best, with our thoughts, with our character at best. And, personally, and then as a collective, of course, it's like super fraudulent, that the voice of truth has basically reduced itself to a small whisper that's just very barely audible. And that's causing a tremendous amount of destruction in people's own lives, right? Like the way that we feel torn in our own lives and feel like not in integrity in our own lives, not thriving, not joyful, not connected. And then, of course, that spreading out to all the exploitation that's happening is people not being impeccable with their word, people not having this sort of self-respect, because naturally that's when you have that, it's going to spread out and radiate from you into the world around you. So anyways, that's just a brief overview of that, but diving into a few solutions, because it's very easy to just speak about all the things that are wrong, but I'm just going to share a few thoughts about solutions to actually become impeccable with our thoughts, aligning our values, our thoughts, our words with our own truth and earning our own respect in that way. The first solution is the technology of sincerity. So sincerity is really asking ourselves, how much am I lying? How much am I lying to myself? Where are all the places, whether it's an internal place that other people can't see and judge and know about, or whether it's my external ways I'm speaking, acting, living. The word sincere, from what I understand, comes from sin sere, means without wax, without adulteration. From what I understand, it applied to both marble. They would kind of fill in imperfect marble that they were trying to sell in the markets with some other sort of material, or they would take clay pots or nice vases or pots and fill them in with wax. And so then you'd have to ask, is this sincere? Is this without wax? To know if you're getting a real authentic piece. So we have to really use that as a gauge. It doesn't take some tremendous technique other than looking inside and using the technology of sincerity to see how impeccable am I being, how aligned am I being with the values that I hold most sacred, with the way that I'm actually speaking. It's not something you can outsource. Like, you can't outsource the feeling of sincerity or the value of sincerity to somebody else to tell you, yeah, you're being sincere, right? It's when it comes to your internal ideals that nobody is seeing, only you can confirm that, really, and look within and see that. So I want you to do an experiment. I want you to observe your values that you believe that you hold, and see all the ways that you are lying about those ideals and those goals. For each of those goals that you make into a list, so make your list of ideals and goals and aspirations. For each of them, ask yourself your willingness to change that aspect of your life, to actually align with what you say is true, right? If there's some some discrepancy or like some obvious gap between the reality that you're living right now and the values that you say you hold, ask yourself, what is my willingness to change that aspect of my life? And if you're not willing, then I think basically one of two things that could happen that could be super helpful is, one, to just realize it's not a real value that you hold. I've done this in the past, just like recognizing, like beating myself up about something I'm not doing that I feel like is a value of mine. And like beating myself up, like, you're not doing it. Like for instance, connecting with my musicianship and my guitar is something I did for so many years of my life. And at one point, joining an ashram, living in India, I didn't have my guitar with me, and I was beating myself up. Man, I've lost this part of myself. I'm not going to connect with it ever again. And I was like beating myself up for not accessing that part of me. And then when how I recognized it was bullshit, basically, is that I was like saying to myself, when I have the time, when I have the privacy, when I have the space, when I have the instrument, then I'll do it. And then I had the space, the time, the privacy, and I didn't. And so it just showed me it's no longer at the level of importance that I placed it at before. It's at a lower level of importance. And just being real with that, I found that it immediately released this like beating of myself up, and naturally I engaged with it way more than I was when I was beating myself up for not doing it. So that is one thing that I found super powerful, is like, if you're not willing to, like, if you're not changing that thing that you're lying to yourself about or like beating yourself up about in life right now, then just maybe it's a value that's shifted or become less important or is no longer a value, and that is also okay. You can release that schism that you've created in your own mind and allow yourself to like engage with it from a place of curiosity and not shame and whatever else is weighing you down from that. So that's one. Or else, if it's if it's not something you're willing to change, like for instance, your job, this is a huge one. I coach people in their businesses and how to become super successful with their businesses. And some people are super attached to the miserable job that they have, that they're like, this job sucks, totally not aligned with my nature, doesn't meet my need for sense of purpose or personal satisfaction. If you're not willing to actually make that sort of change, which of course I can outline a whole way to actually do that. For those of you interested, I can outline a way, like you want to actually do something super meaningful to yourself, start your own business, have it be successful, not have any of the things you fear about having your own business become true. There's a way to do that. But if you don't know those techniques and you're not willing to make that sort of shift, one possible way to release that schism once again is, okay, this job doesn't meet my need for a sense of purpose or personal satisfaction. See what the job does give you, right? It gives you obviously money to support yourself with the abundance of house, food, clothes. If you make more, then travel, luxury, your hobbies, supporting your family, you're giving to your children if you have them, or a spouse. That seeing what values it does meet for you, and really emphasizing those and letting yourself show up to your work with full love and enthusiasm, coming from that place of connection rather than a place of just like, oh, I have to sacrifice myself and my joy in order to just do this duty. Right, but rather just sculpting, reorienting the mind to find an actual joy and sense of connectivity with that value that is not fully being met for yourself. So to undo that schism of dissatisfaction you engineered, it takes a little bit of creativity and connection to what something actually is giving you, the truth of what it is actually giving you that is worth not making the sacrifice to really align it on the deepest level possible. All right, so do that experiment. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that was followable for you. I'm just exploring getting started with these videos, so I hope you like that. And then the last thing I want to tell you to do is, if you're someone who's struggling with the daily to-do list, and you have 20 things on your list to do every single day, and you only get 10 of them done, and you're just like, oh my God, like just not getting, you always feel behind, and like you're betraying your ideals and aspirations by not getting those things done that you said you're going to get done today. And then you're always kind of in this like quicksand of dissatisfaction and like piling list of to-do lists. What I want you to do is, instead of having a list of 20 tomorrow, only putting 10 things on your list. Now, I know you might be like, well, but then I'm not going to, get the 20 things done on my list that I said I was going to do. Great. You weren't doing it anyway, right? The only thing that shifts is now you're going to have 10 things on your list, and you're going to do 10 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 20. Those things, other 10 things weren't getting done anyway. Nothing's changing there. But what is changing is that you're actually building trust in yourself. You're actually building trust in yourself. And then once you've done that for some time and you've got 10 out of 10 for a week, then you can increase it in quantity. But first, to build like, oh, I actually can do what I say I'm going to do. I'm impeccable with my word. And therefore, I actually have a sense of respect for myself. I actually believe in my own value. What I'm doing is valuable. My aspirations are valuable. It actually has a massive effect on your consciousness. And then you increase it to 20 as you're able to keep the commitment. So hope this episode helped. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, follow the channel, follow these teachings, because I feel super excited to bring the Empowered Manhood series to you. Again, I'm Yamuna. Super grateful as your host. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you guys so much.